Hello, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
How are, I know I'm like talking like we're talking to the world, and then because Alexis and I have kind of already caught up, let's just also like notice her new moon in Leo tiara.
Oh yes, let's talk about this. Does it? So this is the new moon in Leo, and anybody that knows anything about astrological energy knows that Leo energy is all about look at me at how opulent I am, tell me great things, love on me, I'm royalty. So I decided to embody the new moon in Leo energy because this is what I'd be doing if I wasn't on camera. So why change it?
I love it. That's amazing. And really nurturing, and that's also like that nurturing healing. That's also really that high aspect and quality of Leo, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. So let's see, we have a few people here live. We do have a couple of questions, and I was just checking. You guys will see me. You all, I'm trying to be a lot better. You all will see me looking down because I'm also going to Instagram where I and my email where I ask for questions too. But we're going to start with some of the questions that were here. If you're good with that, we'll just move in.
I'm good with that. We can go right on in, and don't feel bad about the pronouns. I made the video. I'm out, and I still have to adjust and correct. I did an interview yesterday, and I was like, "All right, you guys." Oh no, right in the middle of the interview. So the important part is we're making and continuing our efforts.
Right. Right. That's yeah. Thank you. And I'm calling myself out on it a lot. So that's really good.
I mean,
I'm catching myself.
Yeah.
I'm catching myself. So we will start with Carla's question. Well, I'm just going to go in order. Her question was, she was reading an article, and I would just love, because there's so much about I'm just going to say this, as I was reading this, I would love to see the article because there's so much about perspective. Remember, when articles are written, it's written from a lens that's intended to shift, influence an emotion or a certain thing. So just remember that. So we have to cut, you don't have to do anything, but we are attempting to come from this lens of frequency. Like that's what this is really all about. So just notice that and remember that when you're reading any sort of article. That's why I would love to lean in, because you're going to see it from a certain lens. So she was saying, I was reading an article yesterday about children in a situation during a sleepover. Two children telling Black and, okay, so the two children I'm thinking were Black and Hispanic, telling one Caucasian girl that her life didn't matter, only Black lives matter. The girl was really distraught, and it brought to light other children thinking that their lives do not matter. Interpreting it like that. So the parents have explained it, but it's been deeply imprinted. How do we do what is right and still have the little ones feeling safe and knowing they are all of value?
So I do think we should get a little bit into what the dialogue is just like thus far so we can catch everybody up. So the rest of it says, this is such a challenge and one that never crossed my mind. Zero disrespect to any person, race, or culture. How do we keep them, our children, feeling that they all belong, but seeing the problem that we are all working at, helping to heal at the same time? Not sure if, well, okay, that part's not necessary. And then I did read into your post. Your post on Instagram was about the flip side of that, a Black father saying how tired he is of his children having to experience racism. So last night we just got a little bit more into the questions of the article, and I'm going to address some of that, which is why I'm going through and reading the rest of it. So it says, it has been a skirted topic from how I was perceiving it through some of my Facebook friends. No one wanting to come out saying what I wrote, but feeling the deeper concern and not wanting to take it in the wrong way. It's out there, Alexis. I feel it deeply, and I do not have a young child that I would really even have thought to have this issue or thought to process. And actually, I'll just give a synopsis out rather than going and reading it all out.
Yeah, that's so, because we can.
some of the questions that I asked were like, how was this situation? I wanted to read the article so that I could get more, try to get more of the details of it. But it seems like, from my perception, there was a sleepover and there was an incident of bullying. And in that bullying, because kids who are not yet empathetic, we have to teach them empathy, bully each other. And so a Black and a Hispanic child bullied a white child. And it really hurt the white child's feelings. And the reason I'm saying it that general is because that's what this is at a child's level. What's happening in the article is it's being written to be used as evidence to shape adult opinions because the adults have the worldview. Now, there are some things that could be a little bit challenging. Well, I'm gonna just say how it is. A little problematic about the perspective of this article. First, this is an incident of bullying between children, and just because it involved Black lives, like the racial dynamics, doesn't mean it's not simply an act of bullying. Having it be a part of why it's not okay to support Black Lives Matter, or why it, or written from the perspective of saying, oh, this movement is harming white children, that's fear mongering, that's white fragility. And then it also is putting a burden on Black and brown races for this singular bullying event. Like, so my fight for equity and children doing what children do, bullying each other, is now somehow like, how to, now it becomes about the greater issue.
Can
so
you also,
so we have to write an article?
while you're there, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, but white fragility, that was my initial thing too. Can you just, for some of us that may not know, can you recap what white fragility is too? So that.
So white fragility is when, how do I say, okay, so like if you're confronted with an uncomfortable truth and you get real defensive, or you start coming up with justifications for why it's okay without doing any inner checking to see where you're coming from, what perspective it is, could what's being said be true? You just get all defensive, or fall apart in tears, or feel attacked by words. And I'm not saying words can't be hurtful, but the level of feeling attacked is a little bit different. Like, you're not attacked by words, you're insulted by words. And those are two different things. But having an adverse, physical, fearful response, defensive, fearful, attacking, having your amygdala triggered by someone saying something about you is white fragility.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I mean, there's a book called White Fragility that's amazing. If
Yes.
you've ever done Me and My White Supremacy, there's white fragility. I mean, there's, it's, but I just want to make sure that I just really want to, like, there's certain things that I want to make sure that I'm like constantly, reiterating, because they're really important aspects. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. Please do. Because we talked a little bit before. I need some of those interruptions and guidance. I do want to say this. I brought a resource. I sent it to Gina earlier, where it's this really cool 9-minute video, and it has like some study guides, and it'll help you facilitate a conversation with your children about what's going on from a perspective of equity and inclusion, and understanding how history is playing out today.
I'm putting it in the chat right now too. Yeah, that's really important. And that's something that I thought too, like when I read this, is like that, and obviously trauma is a thing and that's awful, but like, wait a minute, where are the parents in this situation on either side? Like that is the bigger issue too. Like, that's why, like, what conversations, because listen, like, and I'm not saying that I have all the answers, but I'm calling my stepkids, they're not even my children. They're not even my birth children, but I'm like calling my
stepchildren.
Yeah. But I'm calling them out on it too. Like, hey, like, we have to have these conversations. And I understand what Carla's saying, like the child was really young. Look, there's ways to talk to really young kids that's appropriate. Like, there are certainly ways. So it's almost like I look at from a subtle energy standpoint, the trauma that is there, and like, how do we like stop that trauma? Because you also don't want to instill white fragility in the little person.
Thank you. I was waiting to say that, because so uncomfortable things happen in life, and I'm uncomfortable with the notion that children should be protected completely from discomfort.
Right.
Now, I believe that children's physical bodies should be kept safe. They should be taught how to be optimistic and how to exist in a world that is safe for them. But knowing how to process unpleasant feelings makes healthier adults, right? There's no life that avoids having an unpleasant feeling. There's no life that, there are very few lives that haven't had some form of trauma simply based on perception, because the way you internalize it is what makes it trauma or not, right? So I can't, as much as I would be like, oh, why are you tripping that somebody said something mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can remember my mom telling me she was disappointed in me and it breaking my heart as a child. So I understand, but someone telling you that, like someone explaining to me the difference between disappointed in me as a person or disappointed in my action was what would have been helpful in that moment. You get what I'm saying? Like, teaching children how to become empathetic, compassionate, critically thinking adults, teaching children that when someone insults you, it says more about them than it does about you.
Then there's that, right? And
right.
And it's like that is exactly what we are trying to unpack. You know, where do kids learn this stuff? Their parents have trauma. Like, their parents are hurting, they are suffering. And so of course it gets passed on. And who are we as light workers? Because that is what we are here. Who are we as light workers to do nothing about that? That's not, you know, so of course it's going to, here's the other, the thing that I noticed about this too, is like that white child is not marginalized, right? So like, it's like, there's that aspect too. Like, they aren't the marginalized family in this situation. So I really would, I was like Googling, trying to, because I really would love to
see the article. And so what I think should have happened in this situation is the parents of all parties involved and the children of the children that it happened to should have sat down and had a discussion about the impact of the words that were said, why the children chose to tell the white child that her life didn't matter, why it hurt the child's feelings, so that people can understand and empathize. Both, like, those children needed to be taught empathy. That was also a failure for a lesson for them, right? They like needed to be taught empathy and why that's not okay. Because now this moment, without being addressed and taught and having the parents teach them how to process, is stored in the bodies of those children. And so then think about those children as adults. Do you want them to be going through what we're going through right now?
Right.
No, we got to talk about it. It should have been a discussion explaining to them what's going on in society. I understand how you got that perspective, but let me tell you why Black Lives Matter doesn't mean that only Black lives matter.
Right, and talk it through. My stepdaughter came to me, I don't know if I've shared this or not, but she came to me several months back, and was like, why are there all these things? Like, I'm so confused on Instagram. There's all of these kids saying, I'm Black, give me your money. Like, there was like these kids from her school, and I had to explain to her reparations and what that is. And, you know, explain where, like, their side, like, try to see their perspective. They just don't know. Like, this is not about like white people giving you their money. This is about like government and reparations and all of that. So we talked about it. You have to talk about it. You have to have these conversations. Like, you had, you know, and then what did we do? We did me and my white supremacy together, and we, you know, came together in that nature. So it's, this is.
And I love that, because it's not, first of all, I don't support that behavior. I personally just don't support, give me your money just because, right? I don't support that. Right. There is, now I do have an idea that has to deal with person-to-person reparations, but that's just because I get tired of waiting on the government to do what's right. But the thing is, you taught your daughter why this could exist and how it could be, like, how someone could come from this perspective. So you didn't villainize the perspective, whether you agree with that methodology or not.
Right.
You taught her the conditions that led up to today. So guess what else you taught her? You taught her how to be a critical thinker. You taught her how to take perspective. You taught her how to value other opinions that are different than hers. You taught her not to be afraid of confrontation or to arm herself with information. Like there was a whole lot of stuff that went in that moment because we raise adults, we don't raise children. So keeping them in the stage of being a child is not preparing them for real life. That's preparing them to be fragile on whichever side of the aisle, right? Like,
well said.
I don't want to be a fragile Black woman either. That doesn't mean I don't want my moments where I'm allowed to be fragile, but that's another story.
You are. That was great. Yeah. And this is, thank you. That was great. Maddie saying tools. This one's great. Maddie, you're so cool. Tools for handling extreme racists within family that are unwilling to listen, cannot discuss, only want to fight, are always right. I need better tips on practices for handling these things. Internally, I'm also hitting a block with processing my own guilt and shame around my inadequacies at breaking down the barrier to educating the most blatantly racist Fox. I think that, in the family. Oh, folks. Is it folks? I don't know. I don't know.
That's a non-gender term. So good job, Maddie. So
I like it.
Everyone has sovereignty over their own opinion and perspective. And while, yes, I definitely very much appreciate the effort at trying to convince or educate blatantly racist people, sometimes it's about planting the seeds. So think about this in the same way you would in any other argument. When somebody's all charged up and simply in their mode of defend, deny, fight, justify, whatever their response is to being angry, being right? Let me tell you why I'm right. Or if that could be wrong, but this is also way more wrong, so don't pay attention to this. Like all of these different argument techniques, you can withdraw. Those conversations actually are easier to handle way earlier with some motivational interviewing techniques. I got this from a friend, and then I did some research and was like, oh, wow. So let me tell you how it works. Oh, why can't they just pull themselves up by the bootstraps? And of course, I'm being general, and I'm just trying to add a little bit of humor and brevity to it. But, so the motivational interview response to that is, so I hear you value hard work. Would you agree that hard work is really important? Of course, hard work is important. That's the American way. Okay, well, did you know that most people of color do value hard work, but there are these barriers that prevent them from being able to work hard, right? So you agree and pivot. And then and here's the thing, people get ready for, this is also manipulation, but people get ready for manipulation. They see what's coming. But what you've done when you agree with them is you throw them off a little bit because they don't know which angle you're going to come from. Because remember, arguments happen because people are preparing for what they're going to say next instead of listening to the other person's perspective. And so what happens then is there's a whole lot of internal frustration when you try to force somebody to understand you. And these are things that you can't convince everyone. If we look at this from an energy perspective, from a frequency, we just have to get over critical mass. So it may not even be about that one individual argument, but when you do the stuff that de-escalates, like agree or say, you know what, I value you too much and I see you as much more of an upstanding person than you're displaying right now, to continue to engage. You see how I played to their higher self?
Yeah.
And withdrew? I still want to see you in a positive light, so I'm going to choose to withdraw from this conversation. Saying those little things are the seeds, you're planting seeds of agreement instead of discord.
Right. At the same time, saying this is not okay. I'm not going to respect or acknowledge your opinion, but I will accept where you are and I will surrender to that. Right. It's and that's the important thing. Don't you think? It's coming to those spaces of just saying, these are my values and I'm going to request and ask that you do not speak like that, like you just did, or you do not say that, that's not okay with me or in my presence. And what you just said, so I think that's we still have to be able to stay in a high frequency ourselves, to Maddie's point. So it's like when you're talking about like internally, you have to be able to keep that frequency there. And if you get into like arguments and right, it's like that's how everything just like drops. So,
but I do want to say this. I'm not negating the fact that it's hard not to get caught up. Okay. I get filled with resentment sometimes. I feel ashamed if I don't handle something the way that I want to. But then I realize that's just me changing my frequency about myself. Right. So in this time, I'm not allowed to judge myself for how I respond. That's just a rule that I made for me to keep me in observation mode.
That's beautiful. Can you say that again, just so that we can all recap with that?
In this time, I'm not allowed to judge myself for how I respond.
That's beautiful. That's a really, and I feel that as being high frequency decision and permission. You know, because what does judgment do? What does guilt and shame do? Like it doesn't do, like that's a lower vibing thing, you know, but ignorance and ignoring is also very low vibe. So we can't do that. So it's like finding this middle ground. It's finding, you know, and I can only speak for me personally, being, you know, someone that has gone into the conversations, is what's really helped me is subtle energy work, meditation, calling on so this is fun. I have an angel now that is dedicated and devoted to helping me with white supremacy and addressing people that are comfortable in white supremacy. And I call on that angel. It's a beautiful relationship. And I promise you, 10 out of 10 times, I am being absolutely directed from spirit. And I really believe that it's possible to stay in a high frequency place. I really do believe that. Like I've experienced that as a white person having these conversations, that I can stay, even if people do this, because remember with frequency, as you raise your frequency, you get to that point where other people's frequencies do not knock you. That's why I am like so dedicated to frequency and raising our frequency. You will get to that rung in the ladder. You won't be knocked. And you just, you know, and it's like Alexis was just saying, it's like, I want to still see you in the light. So we're not gonna, you know, have, and it's not to say that, look, I have had a lot of people unfollow me, a lot of people defriend me, I don't care. I just don't care.
But that's kind of where you have to be, because we're changing a species, not these individuals. And so to expect that in our physical realm, things are going to just be like that, that only works when the more we all have the ability to stay at that higher frequency. But that's the journey of our own personal evolutions. That's the both and aspect of this shift, is that I can't even begin to, if I begin to judge myself, then now maybe I don't want to look at it. I get defensive. I project it on you. Now I've sent this negative energy your way, and now I'm hindering your ability to stay at your own frequency unless you're doing that internal work to have it just blow through you. So the thing that we can do is recognize that what we're doing is hard as fuck, okay? It's just hard, period. And I know that it doesn't always have to be hard. We can have lots of moments where we do hard things the easy way. But then give ourselves some grace in that decision. Give ourselves a moment to be like, okay, you know what we're doing, this is a challenge. And just like when I was healing those other parts of myself, that I had some pitfalls along the way, you just get right back on. Don't judge yourself, Maddie.
Yeah.
It's okay that you get mad. Frankly, that shows that your values are in alignment with who you want to be. That discord, that feeling is really just you not being in alignment with who you want to be. And the work is always just to get back. It's not to beat yourself up. It's just to get back.
It's just to get back. That she's saying, yes, I'm battling a lot of resentment, bitter anger towards namely male figures in my life. I have even tried the de-escalation tactics in my own way, but I can't seem to communicate with a specific person without them blowing up in my space. So that's, that's
don't communicate with them.
Yeah, don't communicate.
Yourself.
Call on your spirit team. I think, in this group too, that's like spirit wants this to improve. Like this is it's what was the example? Somebody, I just read it again the other day about like the sheep. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like with there was a Bible analogy. Anyway, I won't even try to like pull it up in my memory. But yeah, it's like it's God, universe, Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, love does not want for this to be happening. Does not want this. Like how there's some light workers that are like, oh, well, that's divisive, it's really separate, it's separateness and eek, and we don't have to look at but it's like, no. They're right in the sense, yes, it's not supposed to be happening. This is not how God created us for it to happen. But at the same time, we still have to like go in and do the work to like untangle it. So it's like, yes, I agree. This is not the way, but like we have to do that light work, the shadow work. And so don't forget to call on that. Why are we not, and Maddie, I know you and your energy, you beautiful energy. Let's call on it. Like, can you come up with a team, ask for a guide, like who's there, and let them channel words through you.
I want to say this too. So in my practices, every spirit is not an elevated spirit. So like
totally.
Spirit, soul, mind, body. Spirit up here is source, universe, God, the way that, the place where nothing but love and there's no right or wrong. But in your soul lineage, personality, energy, frequency, those play out. In your mind, then you're affected by, your perception, where if you're not conscious and aware of what you're thinking, you're affected by that and your body reacts or responds.
Absolutely. Good point. Thank you for bringing that up, because it's really important to make sure that your helpers are divine and sacred.
But two, I practice ancestral veneration. And what that means is, so trauma, a person who dies with trauma may not know they're dead, may not be able to accept what happened, might feel guilt if they say it was an addiction or something like that. And then they still become that succubus kind of energy. They stay in that victim energy, and because they have to go through still another elevation or evolution. So when I practice veneration, I send them light. I'm elevating their soul. I'm sending them that loving intention in order for them to heal in that realm. Because that realm is playing out in my mind, which is reflecting the world that we live in physically with our bodies. And the same thing is happening for every physical body on the planet. So I'm saying that to say, when you feel some of those tinges of guilt and shame, you could do some work to elevate that ancestor that's in you, helping you feel that. That's something that's triggered in your line. That's something that, like, this is where we talked last time about when I was like, well, learn your own religious tradition. I met an Episcopal priest who is a Druid priest also, and he practiced Celtic ancestral ways, and he's a white man, and we had an interview. I can't wait to put it out. But we had and he was like so fascinating and enlightening, and he agrees with this, like, you have to go in and do your own, and you can have ancestors of multiple races, but if they need elevating, that's where the real healing work is done. We do this stuff with the physical symptoms to help make the world reflect a better place. But that real work is done in that soul level with help of source or spirit or all that. But the guys in between, it's as above, so below. That's his own realm that needs some work that we all influence too, right? And we can do that with our conscious choice and intention. And Maddie, I do really feel that it would help you if you were to do that when you wanted to engage with this person. Because I imagine it's a closer relationship than just, if you keep constantly having to deal with them and you're constantly trying to bring them to your position, there's someone you find valuable, you want to keep spending time with.
Yeah.
So rather than doing the work on the surface level, do that work internally so that then you can they begin to ask you questions about your change or ask you questions about your belief because you embody it so much instead of shaming them for theirs.
That's beautiful. Yeah, it gives me chills when you were talking. I'm getting like, and Maddie, yeah, she says, yes. She's also asking, this is a good question too. Where would you, which now I think, I don't know if you would still have it, but this is a good question. So I still want to ask, Where would you say the intersection is between not communicating for self boundaries and becoming dismissive and avoidant?
That's the tough one where you have to be clear on your intention.
Mm.
So how, if someone perceives you as dismissive and avoidant, it doesn't mean that you're being or embodying dismissive, avoidant energy. So acknowledging your position, but saying that I don't want to argue with you is different than validating their position or dismissing their position. I'm just choosing not to engage in this behavior. Now, I'm willing to have a conversation that doesn't escalate to argument. I'm willing to have a dialogue about this rather than a debate. We can practice some techniques on other subjects to get us ready for this. But when you're in that argument state and you're coming to it with that angry, frustration level energy, your intention very likely is not to have a dialogue. It's to convince the other person that your position is the right position and their position is the wrong position, instead of one that is beneficial or in alignment with who they want to be.
Beautiful. Yeah, that ego. I know for me, there's two things that I'll do. And Maddie, I don't know if they'll help you, but I always move into a conversation without saying you. So it's always a bit like, I know that if I'm tempted to say, well, you, I know that I'm making it then, I'm just project. So it's from my perspective, I choose to feel. And the other thing is that we can say, and I've said it to people I really love, is listen, I'm not okay with you talking like that or to me with that. And if you want to have a relationship with me, this has to change. It's like an intervention, like an emotional intervention. And because I can't do it because this is who I am. These are my values. So I'm just going to put that out there and you can think on it and we can come to a resolution.
And that is a place that you have to, well, I can't say you have to, because like you said earlier, you could do anything you want.
Yeah.
But you are in alignment and being authentic to your being in your desire for your existence when you do that, right? You're just putting up a boundary and saying, this is how conversations with me will go, right? You can't choose, like, I don't really want to be around people who don't like Black people. I get to choose.
Well, why would you? I mean,
I'm just saying, but I'm just throwing it out. But I also don't like being around Black people who are homophobic. I also don't like being around people who like to joke in a way that is antagonistic, that points out your flaws.
Yeah, I have a question about that, actually. How do you feel about Black people like the Candace Owens of the world?
Well, you just don't ask me that on live Facebook.
We're human. We're human. We all have judgment, because.
So she's someone I prefer not to think about because I do judge her every single time. And I would really I don't know that I would be equipped to help her come to a place of acceptance, or I'm sorry, I do believe she has some internalized oppression. I don't know that I would even be strong enough in my spiritual values and discipline at this stage. As a matter of fact, I know I wouldn't, to be able to help her realize that, even though that is the work that I do.
You know what, because in some ways I mean, she's not your family, but it's what Maddie's kind of struggling with in some ways. And I know
I want to punch her in the face sometimes and tell her to shut up. Right? You're making it bad for the rest of us. There's a lot.
We're human. I mean, we are human. We are human beings. That, it's a part of the gift.
Oh, I get very frustrated with her. And the problem, no, so this is where, so let me show you how my work has to come in with that. When people who are not Black bring her up, I have but not how you brought her up, right? Where they're like, well, Candace Owens says, and that makes it a valid. The level of emotional self-regulation I have to go through to remember to set an intention for an outcome that I want to have that builds connection, because that's in alignment with my values. This is why I don't judge myself when I mess up.
That's a beautiful answer, though.
I don't always have it.
And Maddie, I wonder if that, if that response helps you, or if that response is, because that's a real, authentic, valid, we are human. I mean, we are here to experience these things. I also really loved Lindsay's question. It was a beautiful question. She was asking, as a nursing mama, which I can't empathize with because I've never given birth, I've really been struggling with the idea that some mothers of color were asked to wet nurse another woman's baby and not able to nourish their own children. It's a notion that sincerely makes me ill just thinking about it. I'm feeling called to reconcile in whatever limited way I can, but what would be a good way to do that? I have to give you my first reaction. It was beautiful. Lindsay, I really think that you had, and I am not, I am not like a past life person. I'm not like, I think it's good entertainment. Occasionally we'll have to go there, but immediately when I read this, I was like, ooh, there's some past life stuff here and past life trauma and past life lineage that was connected with this. So I don't want to like imprint that on you, but I want you to just sit with it to see if that feels right, because that could be like amazing. Like that could be a really amazing journey to do. So I wanted to say that.
I actually got the same hit as far as like that was, so memories, just so you know, and we bring it into science as we don't want to do past life. But in epigenetics, that's the instructions of your DNA that your consciousness imprints for how it to pass out. So like whatever you think you put in your epigenome, it tells your genetics, your genome, how to play out with your DNA. That can be passed down for up to 14 generations, and actual memories can be passed down. So I do believe that you hit a moment of past, like you resonated with something, you learned that, but it feels like something in your lineage. This is just I got the same intuitive hit, something in your lineage where you say, I feel the need to reconcile for that. That maybe I would suggest you begin your own ancestral journey and connect with your ancestors, because ancestors need healing and elevating as well. But then too, know how much nursing means to you and work to create equity for the ability to do so. So the thing that came to me practically, vote for paid maternity leave, right? Because even though we have maternity leave as a law, impoverished people who are working can't afford to take 2 months off, can't afford to take maternity leave, or even if they do, they have to go right back. They can't take a year off. I worked at a place where you get 2 months paid, but then you could take what they call baby bonding, and you could take off up to a year, but it's not paid. So that means you have to be able to afford to take it off in order to have that time bonding with your children. So when you think about what it takes to be a nursing mother, and how, even though we do have the idea of pumping and dumping, I mean, not pumping and dumping, that's only people drinking, but of pumping, that bonding moment, work to recreate that for all mothers, to have that ability. Other countries, they have somewhere to give you a birthing box, and they give, things that help create find solutions like that. If you feel called in that way, create equity for every woman, not just women who can afford it.
Yeah, I really like that. That's a beautiful response. And Lindsay, let us know if that sparks anything within you. I love that it's just, sort of showing up. All of these things that show up are just to be healed. All of these things, it's all to be healed. And, I really do believe that, unless we're dead, we still have things to work on. We're here. So, I mean, it's like we still have things to work on. And this is a huge, huge global human rights issue. No matter who you are, yeah.
And I just want to mention this, what we're fighting is for everyone to be in their full humanity, their full loving expression of humanity, because systemic oppression dehumanizes white people and Black people or bodies of culture, right? It just dehumanizes all parties involved, because if you look at another human and you can be that way to them, something is inhumane in you. And that's not a judgment. That's just a statement of existence.
Yeah.
It isn't, for example, back to the parenting, the bullying issue. If your instinct could be, oh, I have to protect the white children from having their feelings be hurt or from knowing that the world's not safe. And you don't think to include that Black children need to be able to live in a safe world. That's something, that's some cognitive dissonance, right? That's something that isn't globally or isn't from a spiritual place where all is love. That's a scarcity mindset. There's only so much safety available. So this group has to be safe, but this group can't exist in safety too.
Right.
And I'm not saying that that's what you did. I'm just using that example and spreading out from it, right? So one of the questions I asked in that one was like, well, what did the white child already have conversations about race and knowing what it means to live in a racialized society? Like, are you raising anti-racist children? One of the things that you told us earlier is that you are, because you're educating them on the way society is. So then what happens is if someone says like, so what could, if this child was armed with information where she was told by people, oh, your life doesn't matter, only Black lives matter. Well, actually, that's not what Black Lives Matter means. Black Lives Matters is a political, or you know what I'm saying? Like as a organization, that doesn't mean that, it's just saying that sometimes in this society, Black lives don't matter, don't seem to matter as much. And we're just raising awareness to that, right? Like that child also could have been super armed with information and known how not to personalize it, right? If you're talking to children about things that are going on already, that also could have been something that came up in that discussion with the parents afterwards.
Right. Like, let's talk about that because you're never too young. We are never too young. I mean, I wish that, you know, my parents did a lovely job, but I wish that I would have been introduced at such a younger age. You know, unfortunately for me, it was like a high school boyfriend and like his parents, you know, and I was just like, why are they so mean? I didn't know. But that his family educated me, you know, in the way that I never thought would leave such the imprint that it did. So this is, yeah, and that's why we're really staying in this conversation and we're here and we're doing this work together, you know, because it's, and remember that about frequency, like for the people that tend to say like, oh, you know, doing this, it's like, it's so divisive and it's so war and blah. Remember that like when you really truly have a high frequency, you can be doing the loving work and not be affected. You could be having the really difficult conversations because not being willing to even look at the conversations is so low vibe. I mean, it really, you're just
well,
like
saying,
that's
divisive, right? How is us, so acceptance is one of the main principles before you can even begin to adjust your frequency. You got to accept where you are. And so to me, saying having the conversation is divisive is not true. Not having it is divisive.
I agree with you. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I totally agree with you. It's, and again, perspective, we're all, so yeah, I really, yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for all of you for showing up. This was great. I had a conversation with Alexis. You know, one of the things that I will just share with you all is I'm really, one of the things that I struggle with, I'm also on a steering committee in another group for where we're changing the name, but it's WIMX against, you know, racism, and we're unpacking that. And what I'm noticing is there is like the conversation's getting quieter again. And I'm like, why is it getting quieter? Like, why are we getting really comfortable? This is not. And so one of the things was like, well, maybe if we shorten it up, or maybe if we, you know, we'll keep people's attention. But I love that we actually ended up, you know, like here we are 42 minutes later, we're still in it. So I'd love to know, you know, from those of you that are here, what are the topics that you want to explore? How do we keep this going? How do we, you know, because like the last thing that I would want is for Maddie to just say, oh my gosh, this is just so, and Maddie won't do this because Maddie's been in this, I know it. But the last thing that I would want is for us to say like, oh, well, it's just so much. Like, it's just so, oh, it's draining. If that's where you're at, raise your frequency, kick it up a notch, you know, and stay.
Know what would keep you wanting it to be a part of the conversation.
Absolutely.
Like, so it's not that, so I see things getting quiet, but what I would make me feel comfortable, because frankly, I don't want to be talking about it all the time myself. Like, it's stressful, is how is it a part of the conversation in every conversation? Or how is it like the shared future goal? How is that a part of the conversation in every conversation instead of just what's wrong? Help us know how we get to those kind of conversations. Be engaged in that way. Be engaged from a higher frequency place. All right, so we know what future we want to create. How do we talk from that perspective?
Right. Yeah, that Kim saying, I love these conversations. I look forward to talking to Alexis later this week.
I can't wait to talk to Kim either.
Yeah, and Kim will probably be joining us. You know, it was interesting. She contacted, we talked about this a little bit early on when like the George Floyd situation had happened, and she was saying, you know, this is like really real for Filipino people. And, you know, and I totally heard her. And at the same time, what I was being, it was like, okay, there is a space for that. I mean, for a minute, it was like, and unfortunately for a minute, because it still needs to be very much in existence, it was very much like Black Lives Matter heavy. But the truth is that there are so many races. So we are going to start like opening up that conversation. So we're hoping, Kim, you'll join us on the next one. And, you know, we're going to keep this conversation moving. Maddie's saying, I think personal tools on this work is so important and how to better effectively communicate. Okay, cool. That's awesome to know. And Maddie, I would love to know, you know, how, like if you can set it up where, and hope, like, let us know if even the advice that we gave today helped, or if you're like, well, yeah, but I kind of already knew that, because we can go deeper.
Right. We can't, yeah, please. The goal was to give you something you can use. So if you were like, all right, that's the same thing I already know, I just don't do it, we can talk about some more stuff.
Lindsay's saying, I love that this is a safe space. I would love maybe a resource to a blog, or I would love a resource blog post with links to children's inclusive literature. I'd love to collaborate with others and help educate our children. I actually have a wonderful St. Louis author that wrote, I shared it in the group a while ago, but it's a kid's book. It's called like Kids Rock or something like that. I think if I'm remembering, great children's book. So I'll repost that for you.
And Lindsay, the tool that I brought, it has quizzes and things like that. It's designed to help facilitate discussion. It's a short video that then says like, okay, so gather the adults in your life so you guys can talk about it.
I'm going to post that here again. Oh, sorry. Okay, no, I'm just turning it off.
It'll be there after. It'll be there. She'll put it in.
I'm like blowing things up over here. Okay. So thank you all for being here with us. Thank you to Alexis. We are signing off. Again, it really helps us to know what you want. I'm determined to keep this conversation going. This is the light work. This is the light work. We can all do better.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate your commitment. Just not as the person who's here doing it with you, but just as a person who exists in the world with you. I can't stop how do you stop looking at it? You know, when you have friends that hurt and you just a grown ass man that's like crying to me on the phone, what do you do? Like, okay, sorry. That's divisive. Like, I can't, you guys, I can't. I mean, it's, you know, friend from college and just it's just heartbreaking, and you can't just not look at it. You just can't do that. How could you do that? Who would I be if that didn't, like, you know, if I couldn't, if someone with a different frequency than you
right. Yeah. So thank you all of you for being here, and I will see you. I'll be here again on Friday for Feng Shui Friday. Love you all. Bye.
Get your crown on.